I found out my girlfriend was cheating on me through social media. Now I don't know how to move on. Hey Reddit, I'm Ben, 28, and I'm writing this because, honestly, I don't know where else to turn. A few weeks ago, I found out that my girlfriend of nearly 4 years, Hannah, 26, had been cheating on me. What's worse is that I didn't hear it from her. I found out through a social media post, one that shattered the illusion of what I thought was a happy, committed relationship. I never expected this to happen, especially not with someone I had been planning a future with. The betrayal hit me like a truck, and now, I'm left trying to figure out what to do with all these broken pieces of my life. Here's how it all came crashing down and how I'm attempting to make sense of it. Part 1, How We Met, the Perfect Beginning. It all feels like a lifetime ago, but it's crazy to think that just 4 years ago, everything seemed perfect. I met Hannah when I was 24, and she was 22. We were both at this transition phase in our lives, me just starting to find my footing at work, and her fresh out of college, full of hope and excitement for the future. We met at a birthday party thrown by a mutual friend, Sam. I hadn't been planning to go that night. I was coming off a grueling workweek and all I wanted to do was relax at home with a few beers and a good book. But Sam was persistent. He practically begged me to come, saying that I needed to get out more. So, I gave in and showed up to his place, a little annoyed but willing to make the best of it. The moment I walked in, I saw her. She was standing near the bar, laughing with a group of people, her blonde hair catching the light in a way that made it hard to look anywhere else. There was something so captivating about her. It wasn't just that she was beautiful, but it was more than that. She had this effortless charisma, this energy that drew people in. I stood there for a few minutes, watching her from across the room, trying to summon the courage to go talk to her. But every time I worked up the nerve, I talked myself out of it. She's probably got a boyfriend. What if she's not interested? I wasn't exactly the smoothest guy in the world when it came to approaching women, so I hesitated. Finally, Sam noticed me staring and gave me a little nudge. Dude, just go talk to her. What's the worst that could happen? So, I took a deep breath and made my way over. I don't even remember what I said, probably something dumb like, "Hey, I've seen you around, right?" But to my surprise, she laughed, and before I knew it, we were deep in conversation. We talked for hours that night. It was one of those rare moments where everything just clicks. We talked about music, movies, our plans for the future. I remember telling her about my job as a software developer and how I'd always wanted to work in tech. She told me she'd just graduated with a degree in marketing and was trying to figure out her next move. Before the night was over, I got her number, and I remember walking home that night with a grin on my face, feeling like I had just met someone special. It felt like the beginning of something big. Part 2, the honeymoon phase, falling hard and fast. After that night, Hannah and I started dating, and everything felt perfect. You know that honeymoon phase people talk about? That was us. We couldn't get enough of each other. We went out for dinner, saw movies, went on spontaneous weekend trips. It was like every moment we spent together was magical. We used to spend entire Sundays together, lounging around the apartment, drinking coffee, and talking about everything under the sun. One of my favorite memories from those early days was when we decided to take a road trip to the coast on a whim. Neither of us had any real plans, but we packed up the car and drove for hours, just talking, laughing, and singing along to our favorite songs. That weekend was when I realized I was falling in love with her. We were sitting on the beach, watching the sun set over the water, and I remember looking at her and feeling this overwhelming sense of happiness. She was talking about how much she loved the ocean, how she could spend hours just listening to the waves, and I remember thinking, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. It didn't take long for us to say I love you. It was one of those things that just felt right. We weren't playing games, we weren't holding back. We both knew how we felt, and we weren't afraid to say it. Those first few months were bliss. Every time I saw her, it felt like the world stopped spinning for a little while, and nothing else mattered. I had dated a few girls before Hannah, but nothing had ever felt like this. It felt easy with her, like I didn't have to try so hard. She made me feel like I was enough, just the way I was. Part 3, Moving in Together, Navigating Life as a Couple. After about a year of dating, things were still going strong, and we started talking about moving in together. At first, I was hesitant. I had never lived with a girlfriend before, and part of me was worried that it might ruin the magic. But the more we talked about it, the more it seemed like the natural next step. We were spending almost every night together anyway, and the thought of coming home to her every day was something I couldn't resist. We found a small apartment downtown, nothing fancy, but it was cozy, and it felt like a fresh start for both of us. I was excited, and for the first few months, things were great. We were building a life together, making our own routines, and it felt like we were solidifying our future. But living together also brought challenges. It's one thing to see each other a few times a week and another thing entirely to share a space full-time. Little things that we hadn't noticed before started to come up. I'm a bit of a neat freak. I like things in order. I like knowing where everything is. Hannah, on the other hand, was more laid back. She didn't care if the dishes sat in the sink for a couple of days or if clothes piled up on the floor. At first, I tried to let it go. I didn't want to be the guy who nagged his girlfriend about cleaning up, but after a few months, it started to wear on me. I'd come home from work, tired and stressed, and find the apartment in chaos. It felt like I was constantly picking up after both of us, and it started to build resentment. I remember one particular night when I came home after a long day at work. The sink was full of dirty dishes, there were clothes scattered all over the living room, and Hannah was curled up on the couch, watching TV like everything was fine. I snapped. "Hannah, can you at least clean up a little when I'm not here?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. She looked up, clearly surprised by my tone. I was going to get to it later. I didn't think it was a big deal. "Well, it is a big deal," I said, frustration boiling over. "I feel like I'm always the one cleaning up around here. It's exhausting." We argued for a while, both of us frustrated. It wasn't just about the cleaning, it was about feeling like I was putting in more effort than she was. But eventually, we made up like we always did. She promised to be better about helping out, and I promised to try to be more patient. Looking back now, I wonder if that was the first crack in our relationship, the first sign that things weren't as perfect as they seemed. But at the time, I convinced myself that it was normal. Every couple fights, right? We loved each other, and that was all that mattered. Or so I thought. Part 4, Work and Distance, the beginning of the end. The first real strain on our relationship started about a year ago, when I got a promotion at work. It was a big deal, more responsibility, more money, but also more hours. I was working late most nights, sometimes not getting home until after 9 or 10 p.m. At first, Hannah was supportive. She knew how much this promotion meant to me, and she encouraged me to go for it. But as the weeks went on, I could feel the tension building between us. We weren't spending as much time together anymore. I'd come home late, exhausted, and she'd already be in bed. On the weekends, I was catching up on work or too tired to do anything, while she was hanging out with her friends. I could tell it was starting to bother her, but I didn't know how to fix it. One night, after I had worked another long shift, we sat down for dinner, our first real meal together in what felt like weeks. Halfway through the meal, she put her fork down and looked at me with this serious expression that I hadn't seen before. "Ben, do you ever feel like we're growing apart?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," she said, her eyes flicking down to her plate. "It just feels like we don't spend as much time together anymore. You're always at work, and I'm always out with friends. It's like we're living separate lives." I felt a pang of guilt in my chest. I know I've been busy, but this promotion is a big deal. Once things settle down, we'll have more time together. She nodded, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. "I just miss us, you know? I miss the way things used to be." I reached across the table and took her hand, giving it a squeeze. "I miss us too. I'll try to be better. I promise." But promises are easier said than kept. The truth was, things at work didn't settle down. If anything, they got busier. I was putting in more hours, and by the time I got home, I was too exhausted to do much of anything. I try to make time for us, but it always felt rushed, like I was squeezing her in between deadlines and meetings. The distance between us was growing, and I could feel it, but I didn't know how to bridge the gap. I kept telling myself that it was just a rough patch, that once work calmed down, everything would go back to normal. I never imagined that the real problem wasn't my job, it was something much worse. Part 5, The Social Media Bombshell, Discovering the Truth. The day I found out Hannah was cheating on me is a day I'll never forget. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I was sitting at my desk at work, trying to focus on a project that was due by the end of the week. I was stressed, tired, and in desperate need of a break, so I pulled up Instagram on my phone to scroll mindlessly for a few minutes. That's when I saw it. It was a picture Hannah had posted earlier that day. She was sitting at a bar with a guy I didn't recognize, both of them laughing, their faces close together. His arm was draped casually around her waist, and they looked happy. The caption read, "Good times with great company." At first, I didn't want to believe what I was seeing. I told myself it was probably nothing, just a friend, someone she knew from work or something. But there was something about the way they looked at each other, something in the way he was touching her, that didn't sit right with me. My heart started pounding as I clicked on the guy's profile. His name was Ethan, and as I scrolled through his posts, my stomach twisted into knots. There were more pictures of him and Hannah together. There was one of them at a concert, her hand resting on his knee. Another one of them at a restaurant, clinking glasses with huge smiles on their faces. And the comments, God, the comments. People were congratulating them, saying things like, "You two look so good together," and finally, "We've been waiting for this." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. How long had this been going on? How had I not noticed? I had been working so hard to build a future for us, and all the while, she had been sneaking around behind my back. I couldn't focus on anything for the rest of the day. My mind was racing with questions, but the biggest one was, why didn't she tell me? How could she betray me like this and just carry on with her life like nothing was wrong? I left work early, my head spinning with anger, confusion, and hurt. I didn't know what I was going to say to her, but I knew I had to confront her. Part 6, The Confrontation, The Truth Comes Out. When I got home that evening, Hannah was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like it was just another normal day. I stood there for a moment, staring at her, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt like I was about to explode, but I didn't want to lose control. "Can we talk?" I said, my voice tight with barely contained anger. She looked up, startled by the seriousness in my tone. "Yeah, sure. What's going on?" I sat down across from her, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I saw your Instagram post today." Her face immediately paled. She set her phone down, her fingers nervously fidgeting in her lap. "Oh, you did? Who is he?" I asked, my voice shaking. "The guy in the picture. Who is he?" She hesitated, her eyes flicking toward the door as if she was considering making a run for it. "His name is Ethan," she said quietly. We met through a friend a few months ago." I felt my stomach drop. A few months ago. My mind immediately started doing the math. How long has this been going on? Hannah looked down at her hands, refusing to meet my gaze. "Ben, I didn't mean for it to happen. It just..." "How long?" I interrupted, my voice cold. She finally looked up, her eyes brimming with tears. 2 months. 2 months. For 2 months, she had been seeing this guy behind my back, while I was working late, trying to build a life for us. 2 months of lying to my face every time she said she was going out with friends. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why didn't you just end things if you didn't want to be with me anymore?" She wiped at her eyes, her voice trembling. "I didn't know how, Ben. I didn't want to hurt you." I let out a bitter laugh. "You didn't want to hurt me? Do you have any idea how much this hurts?" I had to find out from an Instagram post, Hannah. You couldn't even tell me the truth." She flinched at the harshness in my voice, but I didn't care. I was too angry, too hurt to hold back. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I never meant for it to happen like this." I stood up, my hands shaking. "I need to get out of here," I muttered, grabbing my jacket. "I can't do this right now." Without waiting for a response, I walked out the door, leaving her sitting there in stunned silence. I didn't know where I was going, I just knew I couldn't be around her anymore. Part 7, Spiraling, Sleepless Nights and Broken Trust. That night, I drove around aimlessly for hours, trying to process everything that had just happened. My mind was racing with thoughts and questions I couldn't answer. How long had she been planning to tell me? Or was she planning to tell me at all? What had gone wrong between us that she thought cheating was the solution? I replayed the past few months over and over in my head, searching for the signs I had missed. The night she had come home late, saying she was out with friends. The time she had been glued to her phone, texting someone while I sat next to her, clueless. How had I not seen it? Was I really that blind? Eventually, I parked my car in an empty lot and just sat there, staring out at the darkened street, my mind spinning. I felt like my whole world had collapsed around me. Everything I thought I knew about my relationship with Hannah had been a lie. All the trust, all the love, it felt like it had been ripped away from me in an instant. By the time I finally made it back home, it was past midnight. Hannah was already in bed, the apartment dark and quiet. I couldn't bring myself to go into the bedroom, so I crashed on the couch, staring at the ceiling, too angry and hurt to sleep. The next few days were a blur. I called in sick to work, unable to focus on anything. I didn't want to eat, didn't want to talk to anyone. I was consumed by this overwhelming sense of betrayal and sadness. I kept replaying everything in my head, the lies, the Instagram post, the way she had looked at me when I confronted her. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? I couldn't shake the feeling that I had failed somehow. That if I had just been a better boyfriend, if I had paid more attention, maybe this wouldn't have happened. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Hannah had made her choice. She had chosen to cheat, and that wasn't something I could control. Still, it didn't stop the guilt from gnawing at me. Part 8, Telling Friends and Family, Facing the Fallout. Eventually, I knew I had to start telling people what had happened. It wasn't something I could keep to myself forever, especially since so many people knew about my relationship with Hannah. We had been together for almost 4 years, and people had started to ask when we were going to take the next step, engagement, marriage, the whole thing. The first person I told was Ryan, my best friend. He had been there the night I met Hannah, and he had always been supportive of our relationship. Telling him what had happened felt like ripping off a band-aid, but I needed to get it out. I called him up the day after I confronted Hannah, my voice barely steady. "Hey, man," I said, trying to sound normal, but failing. "Can we talk?" Ryan immediately picked up on the tone in my voice. "Yeah, of course. What's going on?" I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. "Hannah's been cheating on me." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "What? Are you serious?" "I found out yesterday," I explained, my voice shaking. "She posted a picture on Instagram with some guy." I confronted her, and she admitted it. "It's been going on for 2 months." "Holy shit, Ben," Ryan said, his voice filled with disbelief. "I don't even know what to say." "I'm so sorry, man." "Yeah, me too," I muttered, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on me. "I don't know what to do. I feel like I've been blindsided." Ryan didn't have any answers, no one did. But he listened, and that was all I really needed. I needed someone to hear me, to understand the pain I was in. Over the next few days, I told a few more close friends, and each conversation was just as painful as the last. Everyone was shocked. No one had seen it coming. Telling my family was even harder. My parents had always liked Hannah, they thought she was the one. We had spent holidays together, introduced her to my cousins, talked about a future with her. So when I had to sit down and tell them what had happened, it felt like I was disappointing them somehow. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with my mom, trying to hold back tears as I explained everything. "I had no idea," I said, my voice breaking. "I didn't see it coming." My mom reached across the table and took my hand, her eyes filled with sympathy. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I can't imagine how hard this must be for you." I nodded, trying to keep myself together. But the truth was, I was falling apart inside. I didn't know how to move forward, how to pick up the pieces of my life now that the person I had built everything around was gone. Part 9, The Emotional Toll, Sleepless Nights and Broken Trust. The days and weeks after the breakup were some of the hardest I've ever experienced. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, saw the pictures of her and Ethan together, smiling like nothing was wrong. I felt humiliated, like the last few months of my life had been a lie. I tried to throw myself into work, but I couldn't focus. I'd sit at my desk, staring blankly at my computer screen, my mind drifting back to her. Every little thing reminded me of her, the coffee shop we used to go to, the shows we used to binge-watch together, the places we had visited. It felt like I was constantly being haunted by the ghost of our relationship. Nights were the worst. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts of what I could have done differently. Could I have saved our relationship if I had just paid more attention? If I hadn't worked so much? If I had been a better boyfriend? But deep down, I knew that wasn't the truth. Hannah had made her choice, and nothing I could have done would have changed that. Still, the guilt gnawed at me. I kept going over every little detail of our relationship, wondering where it had all gone wrong. I had loved her with everything I had, and yet it still hadn't been enough. I couldn't wrap my head around it. The hardest part was learning to trust people again. After what happened with Hannah, I started to question everything. If she could lie to me for 2 months, if she could betray me like that, what was stopping anyone else from doing the same? I found myself pulling away from people, isolating myself because I didn't know who to trust anymore. Part 10, Starting Therapy, The Road to Healing. After a few weeks of spiraling, I realized I couldn't keep going like this. I needed help. I had never been to therapy before, but I knew I wasn't going to get through this on my own. So, I made an appointment with a therapist, Dr. Lawson, and started going once a week. The first few sessions were tough. I didn't know how to open up, didn't know where to start. But Dr. Lawson was patient, and slowly, I began to unpack the layers of pain and betrayal I had been carrying. One of the first things she helped me realize was that my self-worth wasn't tied to what had happened. I had spent so much time blaming myself for the breakup, wondering what I could have done differently, but she helped me see that Hannah's actions were her own. She had made the choice to cheat, and that wasn't a reflection of my value as a person. It wasn't easy to accept that. I had built my entire life around Hannah, around us, and when that was taken away, I felt like I had lost a part of myself. But therapy helped me start to rebuild. It helped me see that I could be okay on my own, that I didn't need someone else to define my happiness. We also talked a lot about trust. Dr. Lawson helped me see that while what happened with Hannah was painful, it didn't mean that I couldn't trust anyone ever again. It would take time, but I could learn to trust again, both others and myself. Part 11, Reconnecting with Myself, Rediscovering Joy. As the months went on, I slowly started to put the pieces of my life back together. It wasn't easy, and there were still days when the weight of everything felt unbearable, but I was beginning to heal. One of the first things I did was reconnect with old hobbies that I had neglected during my relationship with Hannah. I started going to the gym again, something I hadn't done regularly in years. It felt good to focus on my physical health, to channel my emotions into something productive. There was something cathartic about pushing myself, about feeling my body grow stronger even as my heart was still trying to heal. I also started playing guitar again. I had always loved playing music, but during the last year of my relationship, I had let it fall by the wayside. Picking up the guitar again felt like rediscovering a part of myself that I had forgotten. I'd sit in my living room for hours, strumming chords and letting the music wash over me. It was a small thing, but it helped. It gave me something to focus on, something that brought me joy even in the midst of all the pain. I also reconnected with old friends, people I hadn't seen much of during my relationship with Hannah. It was strange, realizing how much I had isolated myself without even meaning to. I had been so focused on building a life with her that I had let some of my friendships fade. But now, I was reaching out again, making an effort to spend time with people who had always been there for me. I started going out more, hiking with Ryan, grabbing drinks with friends, even going to concerts again. It was hard at first. I still felt the weight of the breakup everywhere I went, like a shadow following me around. But little by little, I was starting to find joy again. Part 12, Moving Forward, Learning to Let Go. It's been almost a year since I found out about the affair, and while I'm not going to pretend that everything is perfect, I'm in a much better place than I was before. The pain of what happened hasn't disappeared, but it doesn't consume me like it used to. I've learned how to cope, how to move forward, and how to find happiness on my own. One of the biggest things I've learned is that healing isn't a straight line. There are still days when I think about Hannah, when I wonder what could have been if things had turned out differently. But I've come to realize that some things aren't meant to be, and that's okay. I can't change what happened, but I can choose how I move forward. I've started dating again, though it's been slow. At first, I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I knew I couldn't let what happened with Hannah define my future. I've gone on a few dates, met some nice people, and while nothing has turned into a serious relationship yet, I'm hopeful. I'm learning to take things one day at a time, to trust myself again, and to trust that not everyone is going to hurt me the way she did. More than anything, though, I've learned to be okay with being on my own. For so long, my identity was wrapped up in my relationship with Hannah, but now, I'm learning to define myself outside of that. I'm focusing on my career, my hobbies, and my friendships. I'm learning to let go of the past, to forgive myself for the things I couldn't control, and to look forward to the future. There's still a part of me that hurts, a part that will probably always feel the sting of betrayal. But I'm stronger now. I know who I am, and I know that I'm worth more than what happened to me. So that's my story, Reddit. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that even when your world falls apart, you can still find a way to rebuild. It's not easy, but it's possible. And sometimes, that's enough.